Welcome back, dudes. In the last video, we successfully built a scalable backend proxy that securely communicates with OpenAI's API. That was step 2 of our journey. Now let's dive into the exciting new phase, which is refactoring and embedding our chatbot into any website and wiring it up with our backend proxy. But before we jump into the code, let's just quickly review our source code repo to understand how exactly everything fits together. Our next focus is the SRC folder, which houses our index.js file, and this file serves as the main entry point, which is responsible for launching our chat component.js. This component is the modular and embeddable version of our standalone prototype that we built in step 1. Additionally, we have the constants folder having another index.js file, which consolidates all the static data from our HTML and CSS files we created earlier. Now let's bring up the source code where we left off, and let's create the SRC folder. And in that, let's create the constants folder as well. And we have our index.js over there. In this file, we're going to consolidate all our style sheets and HTML. We'll store them into these variables over here. So let's bring up our style sheet and HTML. All right, so we're going to copy all of these from start to finish and save them over here. Let's do the same for the HTML file. And we'll grab the AI bot div, which is this. Save it over there. And not to forget our AI bot toggler, which is here. Looking good. Now we need to save our images in a blob storage. So let's open up our Firebase project for that. And let's upload them over here. So under the builds tab, let's open up storage, click on get started, and let's do it in production mode. And let's choose the region. We'll take the default for now. And Google says they have some snafu on their side, so let's see what that is all about. Hit repair. Okay, now let's upload our images. Create a folder over here. We'll call them images. Open it up and upload our files. So it's here in our image file. So these are the launcher and avatars. Let's take both of them. Okay, so when we click on one of them, we can get the URL, which is over here, file location, and we click on this one. Okay, back to the source code. Let's save the value over here. Save it over there. Okay. And AI bot launcher over here. Click this one, back to the source code, and replace this value over here. And let's take this suggestion as well, but it's not AI bot, we'll call it kernel bot. So now let's replace all the instances of our avatar and launcher with these variables over here. So let me grab this value over here and replace it over here. So for this value, I want to replace it with our launcher variable. And there's only one instance. Okay, let's do the same for the avatar. Okay. And that looks good. Now let's also replace our primary and background colors so we can customize them as well. Let's keep them in these variables over here. So let's replace anything with these values with these variables. So any instance of these colors, let's replace them accordingly. So we want the primary color, replace that. No, we don't want that. Go to the next. Yes, that, and that. Okay, looking good. Let's do the same for the background color. We don't want that. Let's go to the next one. Yes, yes. And we're done. So now we can customize our colors just by changing the values over here. Let's also put the value for the bot name. Let's go to the HTML. Okay, now we have a good level of customization. Now, while we're at it, let's also add our API's URL, and let's grab it from the other source code repository. Copy that, and go back to our chatbot, and let's put this value over here. Okay. So our next step would be to populate our chat component file. Let me just close these two and create that file. And let's grab all the variables here and create our module. Let's create the constructor, and it will have a parameter of container. This will be the container referring to where the chatbot will reside. And let's assign this value. This container equals container. Yeah, that's correct, except for the last two. Take it out. And let's check if the container exists. Next, let's create our chatbot UI, inject our styles, and attach the event listeners. So let's do that. Create chatbot UI. And let's bring over the index file for reference. Open it on the other side. Okay, so what we want to do is we want to inject this style sheet for the symbols. So let me copy that. Okay, this seems correct. And it's a style sheet, that's correct. And not quite. Okay. And let's add it to the document. I'll go back to the HTML and let's create this part, the AI bot tabular and the AI bot. Okay, so let me copy that and create the tabular button. Okay, that sounds about right. And class name is AI bot tabular, yes. And inner HTML is this, that's correct. And we add it to our container. Now let's add our chatbot. Okay. And class name AI bot, that's correct. And inner HTML, that's correct as well. And let's append it to the container. That should do it. Next, let's inject our styles. Although I want to name it inject styles. Before we add our event listeners, let's open our scripts file first. And we need to do some initialization over here, so let's do that. Initial input height is not 24, but it should be this value over here. And that should do it. And let's add all the functions over here. Create chatbot UI. And the other one is inject styles. And the other one is the event listeners. So let's do that. Okay. So over here, event listeners, let's put the message input. Let's also do the send button, message thread box, and the two buttons. Okay. Now let's listen to the events. Not quite, but let me just change that into this value over here. I don't need that. Let's do the same thing for the post button. Let's listen to the message input. Yep, that seems about right. Let's take that. And we listen for the other event, which is for the input. And let's see. Da 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 da. And finally, our send button, which looks correct. And now let's do the handle chat function. Yes, thanks once again. We'll take that. However, I want to put a time delay over here. So let me create a set timeout block with 100 milliseconds and put this thing over here. And finally, let's create this create message line over here. It sounds about right. Let's take that. And finally, let's generate the response. Not quite. Let me just redo them. Now for this part, unlike the previous prototype, we're going to call the backend. So let's get a reference to our paragraph. Okay, that looks correct. And let's call the backend. But I want to do a post. Okay. Let me fix the syntax error over here. Right? And process this promise. And let's process the data. Not quite. But this one goes here. And I want to process the error if there's any. So after that error, yep, I want to make it an error, but I need to print the errors. Message element error from the data. Okay. Otherwise, let's process the message. Now, this is the schema that's returned by OpenAI. You can see that later on. This one goes here, actually, over there. Let's say an error has occurred. Please try again. Okay. Now let's create an initialization component for this module. Yep, this is good. And finally, let's do the declaration for the default export. So export default component. Okay, I think that should do it. Congratulations once again for another intensive coding marathon. We have successfully refactored our chatbot into an embeddable modular version with a little help from our buddy GitHub Copilot. Let's finish it off in the next video as we build the main entry point index.js and bundle our refactored code using Webpack, and finally write the code snippet that will allow us to embed the chatbot into any website. So take a break and I'll see you in the next video. Meantime, party on, dudes!